We literally have countless Sith Lords with some sort of deformity. Palpatine's face is pretty yikes, Darth Malak required a respirator, and the respirator gang is further complemented by Darth Plagueis the Wise, Darth Malgus, and Darth Tenebris. We also have Darth Sion, whose entire body is literally stitched together, making him true nightmare fuel should he ever see a live-action portrayal. And we don't need to talk about Vader, who was basically left crippled after his duel on Mustafar, but these physical deformities, scars, and injuries weren't owed to a singular reason. Between their craving for combat, the corruption caused by using the dark side, the Sith have a plethora of reasons for their physical deformities. Obviously, one of the main reasons why Sith Lords end up with scars is the fact that they end up with them after combat. Unlike the Jedi, Sith train for combat in a manner that feels more like they seek it out rather than resorting to it as a last resort. Darth Maul ended up carrying some of the worst scars and injuries due to his fight with Obi-Wan Kenobi on Naboo. In his previous entanglement with the Jedi, he managed to fight Qui-Gon and escape with no injuries or scars, but Obi-Wan was a different beast after the death of his master. He ended up slicing Maul in half before he fell down a ventilation shaft. While Maul managed to survive, he wasn't left intact. He was completely missing the lower half of his body, but thanks to the lightsaber slice, his wounds were instantly cauterized, which prevented him from bleeding to death. He managed to use the Force to grab a maintenance vent, which slowed his fall, and he landed in a trash container that was jettisoned off-world to the junk planet of Lotho Minor. Maul lived down here for over a decade with the dark side of the Force and his hatred of Obi-Wan Kenobi acting as a metaphysical anchor. While it managed to keep his physical form alive, his mind slowly descended into madness. With the help of the Force, he used discarded scrap metal to create a six-legged mechanical apparatus that helped him move around, and he survived off of a diet of vermin. We also see that he has damaged horns and facial scars when he appears to Ki-Ra in his hologram. These reflect the fall on Naboo, as well as the years of wear and tear from surviving on Lotho Minor. Considering the fact that he's a criminal overlord, it's safe to say that he had been in plenty more skirmishes that left him scarred and injured as well. Another key example of how combat has left people scarred and broken is clearly Anakin Skywalker. Prior to his duel on Mustafar with Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin had already formed a scar on his face during the Clone Wars, and this one came from Asajj Ventress. During a duel the two had on Coruscant, she managed to slash his face in order to taunt him, and it triggered a huge fit of rage in Anakin that sent him into overdrive. Obviously, the scars he was left with after burning alive on Mustafar were much more substantial, and it's very clear where they came from. Over the years as Darth Vader, he was protected by his armor, but there were multiple times when his armor was damaged, with his true organic material being vulnerable to attacks. With his bio body being exposed, enemies would target these soft spots more often and land blows that would leave even more scars that could only be healed so much in his back-to-tank sessions. During the Old Republic time, Darth Malgus suffered terrible injuries during his invasion of planet Alderaan, where he was confronted by a group of Republic defenders. His injuries actually occurred in two stages, though. During a close-quarters struggle with Jace Malcolm, a thermal detonator was detonated at point-blank range, and the explosion severely burned Malgus' face and damaged his respiratory system. Immediately after this, Satele Shan used a massive force blast to throw Malgus into the cliffside, which caused the cliff to collapse on him. Naturally, he was hurt, and he was forced to wear a respirator mask forever since his lungs and jaw were so severely damaged. He was left with pale, crispy skin thanks to the burns, and he was covered in lacerations and contusions. He lived the rest of his life in intense physical pain thanks to these injuries. An even worse instance was seen with Darth Sion, who, unlike Vader and Malgus, wasn't injured in one singular event. His body was repeatedly shattered and broken over decades of combat encounters. He was a Sith marauder during the Great Sith War, and he was technically killed multiple times. Every time that he was defeated left him with immense pain that allowed him to use the dark side to pull his broken parts back together. His entire skeletal structure was splintered thousands of times and only reassembled through his sheer willpower and refusal to die. In the end, he was only able to die after the Jedi exile convinced him to let go of his pain so his body could finally succumb to total necrosis. This leads us to another aspect of why Sith are constantly deformed: the Force itself. While Jedi use the Force to heal, protect, and aid those in need, the Sith use it to destroy, alter, or manipulate. Palpatine wasn't always scarred and deformed, being that he was once he became Emperor of the Galactic Empire. He looked like your typical elderly politician, but it was after his encounter with Mace Windu that he was left in a questionable state. Technically, he did it to himself as he tried to strike Mace with Force lightning, and the Jedi was able to reflect it back at him. Over time, the lightning left him in a deformed state where he was hardly recognizable, and it also damaged his internal organs as he had trouble breathing and speaking clearly afterwards. Not only did it damage his physical appearance, but it stripped his Force mask, which was originally how he was able to hide his true identity. Darth Bane also suffered from damage from reflected Force lightning as he suffered severe injuries during the duel on Tython. His Orbalisk armor was normally impenetrable, but after he unleashed a huge blast of Force lightning at a Jedi, they reflected it back at him, causing Orbalisk parasites that were on his skin to die and explode. The lethal toxins released from the dead parasites entered his bloodstream, and he was only able to survive because his apprentice took him to a healer who removed the dead parasite shells. Over the years, he suffered from muscle tremors and a decline in his physical strength, but the dark side of the Force was also burning through his mortal shell of a body. During his final duel with Darth Zana, she summoned tendrils of pure dark side energy, and one of them managed to vaporize one of Bane's arms. Bane ended up getting the worst of both worlds as constant combat encounters and his own Force powers, being reflected back at him, destroyed his body. Another instance of the Force deforming the Sith came with Darth Nihilus. Not only did he lose his physical appearance, but he lost his humanity entirely. During the Battle of Malachor V, a super weapon called the Mass Shadow Generator was activated, and it crushed the planet in an instant. This caused a tear in the Force from the sudden overwhelming loss of life, and Nihilus managed to survive. He was left with a spiritual emptiness, which left him with an insatiable hunger for Force energy. Over time, he found out that draining the life force of others briefly eased his agonizing pain, but as he consumed more energy, the dark side ended up eroding his physical body more and more. Eventually, he was forced to use the Force to rip his spirit from his body as his flesh decayed, and he was able to bind it to his mask and armor. With nothing left of the man inside, he became a ghostly specter that consumed all living energy at will. Another reason for Sith being left with scars and injuries is the fact that the Rule of Two promoted infighting that left them this way. Jedi never had to deal with this since there was no such rule, and the cycle was in constant rotation between training and taking a new apprentice. Around 500 BBY, Darth Geen and Darth Gravid engaged in a duel between master and apprentice as Gravid decided to turn toward the light side. His apprentice Geen was unhappy with the fact that he was destroying thousands of years of Sith knowledge and artifacts, so she challenged him. Geen managed to kill Gravid, but she was left horribly mutilated. She had lost her left arm, right hand, and a large portion of her chest and face, and aside from the extensive use of cybernetic prosthetics, she was left to carry scars from her old master for the rest of her life. The most common reason for why the Sith were always known to carry scars and injuries while the Jedi rarely suffered from these long-term is the fact that the dark side of the Force was corrupting them and their physical appearance. The dark side is inherently parasitic, and the more that it takes from the host, the more they're left to deal with the physical toll and appearances. While Darth Sidious's injuries were caused by the reflection of his own power, it continued to drain him over time as he became paler, shriveled more over time, and lost most of his hair. He managed to use this to his advantage as he used it as propaganda, and it helped him gain sympathy from the Senate as he framed the Jedi as assassins. With no need to hide his true identity anymore, Sidious wore his scars proudly, and he even used it to his advantage as it struck fear and disgust into the hearts of his enemies. He was so strong in the dark side that his physical body could barely contain it, and this is why his eyes were permanently yellowed and his teeth appeared rotten. After his death on the second Death Star, his essence was carried into a resurrected body on Exegol, but it was left as a crumbling, decaying husk. His essence ate away at all of his clone bodies because they weren't strong enough to hold his essence with the strong connection to the dark side, and this is why he needed a proper host. In the end, his own power was turned against him once again as Rey fought him on Exegol. As he tried to strike her down with lightning, she reflected it back at him, and this permanently destroyed his spirit as his husk of a body was dissolved. As for Vader, he lived a life of torment and pain thanks to his master making it so he was constantly experiencing pain in his suit. This was used to fuel his connection to the dark side as well as keeping him in check so he didn't surpass Sidious. Vader only found relief in brief moments of meditation and his bacta soaks. Traditionally, bacta tanks were able to progress healing at tremendous speeds, and most of the people who used them were left with few visible scars. Luke Skywalker even used a bacta tank on Hoth after his encounter with the Wampa, and within days his scars were gone. Vader's scars never left or healed, and this is due to his connection to the dark side. While they helped him heal in a sense, his dark side connection continued to feed off of these injuries, and his injuries were irreplaceable. In order for Vader to mend his flesh through the dark side, he would have to tap into intense rage, and the moment that he felt joy from healing, he would break his connection to the dark side. This usually caused whatever injury he was healing to relapse and get even worse, such as when he tried to heal his lungs. Joy is a light-sided emotion, and the moment he felt it, his lungs would collapse back to their scarred state. In Vader's case, he eventually got to the point where he felt like he deserved what he got. Unlike other Sith Lords who were fueled by rage and self-promotion, Vader was fueled by guilt and self-loathing. He saw his scars and suit as a physical manifestation of his failure to save Padme and the Jedi that he had betrayed all those years ago. His self-loathing blocked him mentally from ever being able to restore himself fully. Darth Malak fought his former master, Darth Revan, and he was left with a severed jaw thanks to a lightsaber strike. This meant that he was left to wear a prosthetic and vocabulator so that he could speak. Over time, this cybernetic was intentionally used to cultivate an aura of fear and intimidation to go along with the deathly pale skin and yellowed eyes that came as a symptom of dark side degradation. Some Sith philosophies believe that their physical transformation was a necessary sacrifice for the power that the dark side gave them. A pristine body was a sign of moderation, or they were viewed as being too Jedi. Darth Sanguis believed that this was the case for him. He sought immortality on Exegol, and he attempted to do so through forbidden rituals. These rituals left him as a twisted and hunched creature, and he realized that this was due to the dark side energy that he was cultivating for his rituals. In his mind, he believed that this was the price of his tortured immortality, and he managed to trick others into taking his place so that he could finally find a release from the state he had put himself into. In many cases, other Sith Lords saw their scars and physical corruption as a badge of honor in their connection to the dark side. During the time of the Old Republic, Darth Nihilus was a member of the Dark Council, and she took great pride in her corrupted appearance. She was an expert in ancient, powerful dark side rituals, and she managed to channel massive amounts of dark side energy. This pooling of energy acted as a poison on her biological form, and she ended up aging prematurely, and her body began to wither. While most Sith Lords were known to hide their decay and corrupted physical appearance behind masks and armor, she chose to remain deformed and showed it proudly. She preferred her haggard appearance as it showed her power and knowledge in all things related to the dark side of the Force. Since she was a Sith pureblood, she was naturally more resistant to the degrading effects that the dark side had on humans. With this in mind, the way that she was so visibly corrupted showed just how much energy she pulled in order to achieve the haggard look that she sported. With over 20 years on the Dark Council, she had more than enough opportunities to perform most rituals known to the Sith. In the end, she was essentially burning out from the inside due to her ambition in high-voltage sorcery. She ended up dying during a confrontation with a reborn Revan in her citadel on Droman Khas. She managed to overpower Lord Scourge and Mitra Surik with her speed and Sith sorcery, but she unleashed a massive storm of dark side energy that was absorbed by Revan. He redirected it at her, and it managed to bypass her defenses. She was reduced to a pile of charred ash. A lesser-known group who used their physical scars and appearance to instill fear in their opponents were known as the Dread Masters. Raptus, Bestia, Brontes, Caltheus, Styrak, and Tyrans were high-ranking Sith Lords who served Vitiate, the Sith Emperor. Force fear and psychological warfare made them capable of driving entire armies insane and making fleets surrender without firing a single shot. All of them suffered from extreme dark side degradation, and they were left in a state of advanced supernatural decay. Unlike other dark side users, they were over a millennium old, and their physical forms were burned out from channeling immense dark side energy over that amount of time. All of them suffered from skin that was withered, death-like, and pale, which made them appear as walking corpses. Throughout their study of the Probus devices, their physical features were warped into terrifying, shriveled beings. Their physical damage was so severe that they were left to hold themselves together through their collective mental bond, and the masks that they wore to cover their dark side corruption were used to amplify the amount of terror instilled in enemies and allies alike. Their connection was so strong while being fragile at the same time that the death of one meant the end of them all. On the planet Darvanis, Dreadmaster Styrak was hunted down and killed by a Republic strike team, and this drove the remaining 5 Masters into a state of utter madness and instability due to their collective hive mind. Brontes was next to fall, as she was confronted and killed after the remaining Masters retreated to their base on Oricon. After her death, the remaining 4 Masters retreated to the throne room, where they summoned the vengeful spirits of Styrak and Brontes to aid them, but the strike team killed the spirits as well as Raptus, Bestia, and Tyrans. Calpheus was the last one to survive, and he was taken into Republic custody to be treated by the Jedi on Tython. Their connection to the dark side not only scarred them physically, but it scarred their minds collectively, to the point that the death of one meant the end of them all.